Hello, everyone. My name is Shauna Young. I'm so excited to be here with you again. We're giving people a few minutes to get online. We're supposed to have about 80 parents and families with us. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Engineering Outreach Programs. I'm very excited to say we're having a wonderful webinar today focused on college affordability and financial aid. I'll start by going through with you an overview of the OEOP, the purpose of our webinars for parents, and then introduce Linda Borden, our consultant for student support, and she will introduce our speaker, Meredith. And then at the end, we'll all be available to answer questions that you might have about this process. I'm really excited about this webinar because when I came into my role in 2008, I recognized that we needed to do more as an office to support all of you. And in addition to helping your students learn science and engineering, I completely understand that the college application process is not just daunting for the students, but also for families. And so our goal with this is to ensure that you have information that you need, and the ability to ask questions about this process is really pivotal to your families and your students being able to go to the best college suited for them. So give you a little background about the OEOP. We are focused on making science and engineering accessible to all students. We focus on students who come from communities and backgrounds that have less access to places like MIT, especially majoring in science and engineering. We love the work that we do, and we believe that the work that we do does a few things. Our values are rooted in transformation of our students, providing access to students, and making sure that we provide a very supportive community for your children and your family. So it's really wonderful work. And we do that through 5 core programs within our office. Many of you are connected in some kind of way to all of these programs, meaning that your students might have done the MITES program that was 6 weeks over the summertime here at MIT, taking high-level science and math and engineering courses, or they came here for a week through the E2 at MIT program. They may still be online with us through the MOSTEC program and came to MIT for 5 days in the summertime. They may have been with us up to almost 3 years through CSS Academy, our local Saturday enrichment program. Or they might be, embarking on middle school and high school through the STEM program, where we take students from the Boston area and really expose them to high school level content while they are still in middle school. And so those are the main things that I wanted to share. We also have an upcoming deadline for our MITES, E2, and MOSTEC application process. That application went live in November, and candidates and applicants will have until February 3rd, I believe, to get their applications in. So we encourage you to let your students, your children's friends know about it, schools know about it. We'd love to have them in the applicant pool. We have over 2,000 students right now working on their applications. The students have to be in their junior year of high school. They can go to any kind of school. U.S. citizen and permanent residents in the programs offered E2, MOSTEC, and MITES are free of charge if students are selected. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I will introduce Linda Borden, who's been so supportive of our students and you and your families, and she'll introduce this web session for you.
Thank you, Shauna. Wanted to wish all of our OEOP families a happy 2016. We're so happy to have you joining us this evening. And we want to thank all of those who filled out a survey after our last webinar. We will again be sending another survey out after this webinar. Your comments are really helpful to us. We are here to try and make sure that we're addressing your questions and concerns, and the best way for us to do that is through your feedback. So I really appreciate you taking the time. It doesn't take too long to fill out, but thank you for doing that. Tonight, we are so excited to have Meredith Barnhart from the Massachusetts Educational Finance Authority as our presenter on college affordability and financial aid. Meredith works to provide a comprehensive curriculum of education and guidance on the college enrollment and financing process to families. And before she was at the Massachusetts Educational Finance Authority, she worked for 10 years in finance and undergraduate financial aid at Boston University. Just a few matters of logistics. Ms. Barnhart is presenting from an off-site location, so you will see her slides on the screen, but you will not see her. We will not have a video feed for her. I appreciate all of you that sent in questions ahead of time. I have given those to Ms. Barnhart, and she will be addressing those questions, but we also have a question section as the webinar is in progress that you can let us know your questions, and we will let Ms. Barnhart know them at the end, and she'll address those as well. So thank you so much again for joining us. We're really happy you're here, and I'd like to welcome Meredith Barnhart.
So thanks everyone for joining us. This is the Financial Aid and College Affordability webinar, and my name is Meredith Barnhart again. I'm from the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, and I'm just going to go through the steps of how you can actually afford college and apply for all of the financial aid that's out there to help you pay those college bills. Just a few starters. As you're thinking ahead to sending your son or daughter to college, there are some steps you can take now, even if you have a younger student in high school. The first thing that you can be doing is to start or continue saving for college. If you're already saving for college, great work. And if you're not yet, it's never too late to start. Many of you may have or at least have heard of a 529 college savings plan, and these are great plans. They're all over the country, and they allow families to save for college. Even if you can save a little bit a month in one of these plans, that will help you when your son or daughter goes to college. Some families are hesitant to start saving because they don't believe they can even save enough for a semester or a year of college. But anything you save prevents you from having to borrow that amount later on. So save as much as you can every month in those college savings plans. Second thing you can do is to start looking for college scholarships and apply for those scholarships. There are plenty of free scholarship search engines. One of them is fastweb.com. That's a very popular search engine, but there are plenty of other scholarship search engines out there on the internet. Never pay to apply for a college scholarship. It should always be free, those applications, and have your students apply for as many scholarships as they think that they will qualify for. It's also helpful for you as a family to check with the school guidance counselor in addition to saving for college and then applying for college scholarships. You can also explore different college options. There are plenty of four-year schools that students can attend, but there are also two-year schools, most of the time called community colleges, where students can attend for 2 years and then transfer to a four-year school. Students can always live at home and then attend college while living at home, and many students opt to work part-time while also going to school part-time. So that's an option for students as well. And one of the most important things to do to afford college is to apply for financial aid. What exactly is financial aid? It's simply money to help students pay for college. And there are three main types of financial aid. The first are grants and scholarships. And grants and scholarships are the best type of financial aid. They are free money. So if you receive a grant or a scholarship to help you pay for school, this is great news because you never have to pay back that money. It's completely free. Second main type of financial aid is what we call work study. And work study is simply a work program for students. It allows students to work part-time, usually on a college campus, and earn money throughout the year. Students are told at the beginning of every year if they are a part of the work study program, and then they earn that money throughout the year in a job. And then finally, student loans are considered financial aid, and student loans are simply money given to students to help them pay their college costs, but they do have to be paid back by the student after graduation. There are two main categories of financial aid. The first type is merit-based aid, and these are sometimes also called merit scholarships. Merit-based aid is given to students based on some talent or skill. So if a student has received a merit scholarship or merit-based aid, It's because that student has shown academic skills, artistic, athletic, and the student is being recognized for those skills and then being given money to help pay for college. Applicants for merit scholarships are often compared against one another. So many students might be considered for merit scholarships at a college, and their academic or their artistic or their athletic credentials are compared across the board, one against another, and the highest achieving students are given those merit scholarships. If a student receives merit-based aid or a merit scholarship for a freshman year, it may be renewable for every year, so the student may have the opportunity to receive that scholarship every year. But some of these scholarships, some of this merit-based aid, may only be available to the student for maybe the first 2 years of college. So it's helpful to read the fine print if the student is given this type of aid to make sure that you as a family understand if the student will receive that merit-based aid every year or just 1 or 2 years of college. And finally, this type of aid, this merit-based aid, isn't offered at every school. Not every college and university in the country has these types of scholarships, but the majority do. So you can research by going to every website of the colleges and universities to which the student is applying and research to see if that college and university has merit scholarships or merit-based aid. The second main category of financial aid is need-based aid, and this is the main type of financial aid. It is financial aid given to a family based on their financial eligibility. The family will fill out financial aid applications, and once the family fills out those financial aid applications, the college will decide how much that family needs to help them pay for school. A family's eligibility is based on one formula. So there's a formula that every school in the country uses. And this formula determines how much financial aid each student is eligible to receive from a college or university. Most financial aid out there is need-based, meaning most of the money that students receive for college is based on the family finances, is based on a family's financial eligibility. And finally, for need-based aid, a student must be making what we call satisfactory academic progress in order to continue to receive this financial aid every year. So every year, a student will be evaluated to see if the student is eligible to receive this need-based aid based on the family's finances. But the student must also be making this satisfactory academic progress. And that basically means the student needs to be earning high enough grades and credits, needs to earn a certain number of credits at college every semester to keep receiving this need-based aid. Financial aid actually comes from a few different sources. The federal government provides a good amount of financial aid, including grants, that's free money, work study, that work program I mentioned, loans, and tax incentives. The state government also often receives, or I should say provides, a good amount of financial aid. Depending on the state in which you live, the state can provide grants, scholarships, tuition waivers, and loans. The colleges and universities also provide a good amount of aid, both grants, scholarships, and loans. And then other agencies as well, nonprofits, foundations, companies provide scholarships, and then some provide loans to students. What's helpful to understand is that there's a lot of financial aid out there. The total amount of financial aid given to undergraduate students in the past academic year, 2014-15, was over $183 billion. So there is a lot of financial aid that is available to students. How do we all go about getting that financial aid? What you need to do is apply. And so what you'll all have to do is fill out the FAFSA. And you've probably heard of the FAFSA. It stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It's an online application provided by the Department of Education, and it's actually required by all colleges for federal and state financial aid. So if you have a student going to college and that student wants to apply for financial aid, you will need to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA just opened on January 1st. That's the 2016-17 FAFSA. And you'll fill out the FAFSA for the academic year during which the student is going to college. So if you have a high school senior going to college next year during 2016-17, you will fill out the 2016-17 FAFSA. The website is FAFSA.gov, so FAFSA.gov, and this is a completely free application. You should never pay to fill out the FAFSA. You may have heard of another tool related to the FAFSA called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool. And this is a tool affiliated with the FAFSA that you'll be able to use after you complete your 2015 tax returns. It basically allows you to log into the FAFSA, into your application, and pull in your 2015 tax return information. Many of you haven't done your 2015 taxes, and you won't have them completed by the time you need to do the FAFSA, and that's perfectly fine. You're going to fill out the FAFSA. The FAFSA is going to ask a lot of information about your 2015 tax returns, but if you haven't done your taxes yet, it's perfectly fine to continue through the FAFSA, and you'll just estimate the answers on the FAFSA as best you can. It would be helpful to refer to your 2014 tax return to answer those questions. And then once you submit the FAFSA, later on, once your taxes are completed, you can actually log into the FAFSA and update your information by using this IRS data retrieval tool. That tool won't even become available until February 7th. A note that the FAFSA has to be completed every year that the student goes to college. So for those parents of high school seniors, you'll do that FAFSA now for next year and then every year while the student's in school. Another new term this year associated with the FAFSA is the FSA ID. And this is simply a login. It's a username and a password that allows the student and the parent to complete the FAFSA. So before you even do the FAFSA, it's helpful to set up your FSA ID. And you can go to fsaid.ed.gov, and that's listed on that second to last bullet. And you can fill in all the information that the form asks you to submit, and you'll then have an FSA ID. This is completely necessary to complete the FAFSA, and both the student who's applying for financial aid and one parent will need an FSA ID. If any of you ever had a federal PIN or have heard of the federal PIN, this FSA ID is replacing the PIN. So the PIN has been retired, and now everyone will use an FSA ID. When completing the form to sign up for an FSA ID, you'll pick your new username and your password, and you'll have to provide some personal information and set up some challenge questions, as you do with many online forms. At NEFA, the organization where I work, we did a webinar on the FSA ID, and so if you're wanting more information about creating that, you are welcome to look at that recording on our website, nefa.org, on our events page. So looking through the FAFSA, what actually is on it? First, you'll sign in, you'll get your FSA ID, the student will fill in name, birth date, social security number, address, and then the student will be asked to list the colleges where the student is applying. So you can search for the different colleges and then put those on the FAFSA. If you only know some of the colleges where the student is applying, that's okay. You can list those on the FAFSA, submit the FAFSA, and then later on go in and add more colleges. The FAFSA will ask for information from the student and the parent. If you're in a situation where you're working with a student or you have a student and the student can't provide parent information, it's best to contact each college and university and let each college and university know. There are some students who qualify for what we call independent status or as independent students. And those students don't need to report parent data on the FAFSA. But this is a very small group of students and they have to meet certain criteria. They might be married, active duty military, perhaps they're an orphan, in legal guardianship, an emancipated minor. There's a small group of students who qualify as independent. If the student doesn't automatically fit into one of those categories, but still can't provide parent data, that's when you as a family can reach out to those colleges and universities, and they will walk you through the process of how to apply for financial aid without parent information. For parents, if you have a student with married parents, those parents will both put their information on the FAFSA, and that includes same-sex parents. So if there's a student in a household with married parents, both of those parents will need to put information on the FAFSA. If there are parents who live together with the student but never got married, doesn't matter. Both of those parents will also need to put their information on the FAFSA. For families with divorced or separated parents, the student will have to determine the custodial parent. And the FAFSA instructs the family to select the custodial parent by determining which parent the student lived with the most over the past 12 months. So if I'm a student and my parents are divorced and I live primarily with my mom and I see my dad on the weekends, my mom would be my custodial parent. Only my mom would put her information on the FAFSA. My other biological parent, my father, in my example, would not put his information on the FAFSA. However, if my mom is remarried, my custodial parent is remarried, and I have a step-parent, that parent also puts information on the FAFSA. So if I'm a student, my parents are divorced, I live with my mom, and my mom is remarried to my stepdad, and I see my biological dad once a week, only my mom, myself, and my stepdad put information on the FAFSA. My biological dad, even though I see him all the time and he's very involved in my life, does not put any information on the FAFSA. The FAFSA will ask a lot of questions about income, as I mentioned, and for the 2016-17 FAFSA, the income will reference 2015, all of the income my family received in 2015. As I mentioned, if you haven't completed your 2015 tax returns by the time you're filling out the FAFSA, it is completely fine to estimate that information. The FAFSA also asks questions about assets, and assets include a family savings account, checking account, investments, and any other real estate, perhaps any rental property the family owns. When answering questions about assets, you do not include any information about your primary home. Even if you live in your primary home, do not report that on the FAFSA. Any money sitting in an official retirement account should not be reported on the FAFSA. So any money in a 401k or 403b or an IRA should not be reported on the FAFSA. If you have a life insurance policy, that should not be reported. And if your family owns a business, a small family business, and a small family business is defined as a business that is owned at least, or I should say over 50% by your family and has less than 100 employees. So you have a small family business, perhaps parents own it or student and parents own it, you do not report the value of that business on the FAFSA. You'll report the business income, but not the value of that business. And then finally, the FAFSA will ask about the number of people in your household and the number of children in your household going to college. Once you submit the FAFSA, there will actually possibly be other financial aid applications that you'll have to submit. Another popular financial aid application is the CSS Financial Aid Profile. Many of you may have heard of that. It's required by about 265 colleges across the country. There is a cost associated with the profile. So while the FAFSA is always free, the profile costs $25 to submit the application to your first school, and then $16 to submit that profile application to every other school. It is an online application provided by the College Board, and you can find it at student.collegeboard.org/profile. The profile asks a lot of the same information that the FAFSA asks. It asks about parents and students, income and assets. The one difference, or one of a few differences with the profile often requires information from the non-custodial parents for those families with divorced or separated parents. And those non-custodial parents have a separate form to complete called the non-custodial parent profile. So in my application, or my example, earlier, where I was a student and I lived with my mom and my stepdad and I saw my biological dad on the weekends, if I were filling out the profile, some schools might require my father, what we call the non-custodial parent, to fill out the non-custodial parent profile, the completely separate application. You can find out what colleges require the profile by actually going to each college and university website. So get a list of all the colleges where the student is applying, and go to the financial aid section of those colleges' websites and find out the financial aid applications that are required. Some schools might only require the FAFSA. Some schools might require the FAFSA and the profile. So you can find out if the profile is required on those financial aid websites of the different colleges and universities. If you'd like more information about the profile, we at MISA did a webinar on the profile, and you can watch that recording as well right on our MISA.org/events page. And then finally, some colleges and universities have their own financial aid application. They all still require the FAFSA because, remember, every college and university requires the FAFSA. But in addition, they might have their own financial aid application. And again, you can find out if that's a requirement by going to those different financial aid websites of all the colleges and universities. So what happens after you apply for this financial aid? You'll submit those applications online, and the colleges that you've indicated on those applications that should receive the information will receive that information electronically, and the state in which you live will actually also receive your FAFSA information electronically. As a family, you'll receive a Student Aid Report, or SAR, and this is basically a summary of all the information that you submitted on your FAFSA. If you fill out a CSS Financial Aid Profile, you'll have the opportunity to print out a profile acknowledgement, which is simply a summary of all your profile information. If you have any special circumstances, it's a great idea and suggestion to contact the financial aid office sooner rather than later to let them know of your special circumstances. So let's say you submitted those financial aid applications, but a parent lost a job, or you're having financial problems, or something happened in your family's financial status and you need the financial aid office to know. You can contact them anytime. Many of them will suggest you send them an email or call them or send them a fax. If there's anything unusual in your family situation, perhaps you weren't even able to complete those financial aid applications, contact each financial aid office at all the colleges and universities where the student is applying, and they can let you know what to do to progress through the financial aid process. You may be involved in a process called verification as you apply for financial aid. And this is a process required by the Department of Education, and it requires colleges and universities to ask for basically extra documentation and information after you submit your financial aid application. So after you submit the FAFSA and maybe the profile, A college or university might contact you and say, you have been selected for the verification process and we need additional documentation for you. This is a perfectly normal process. Millions of students are actually selected for this process every year, so don't be surprised if you get requested to take part in this process. The college or university might send you a letter, they might send you an email requesting additional documents. They might request a copy of your tax return or tax return transcript. They might request that you update your FAFSA using that IRS data retrieval tool with your tax information once your taxes are completed. You must comply with any request through this verification process or you will not receive financial aid. So it's very important to listen to those voicemails from the college financial aid offices, to answer any mail you receive. Good reminder to the students in your household, because they might be receiving those emails. They need to check those emails that they're receiving because they might be requested to submit additional documents. And then finally, once colleges get all your information, they're going to review your applications and then determine your financial aid. The formula that you see on your screen is the main formula that colleges and universities across the country use to determine how much financial aid you as a family will receive. They are going to take their cost of attendance, they're going to subtract your expected family contribution, and the resulting difference is going to be your financial aid eligibility. So let's walk through what all those terms mean. Cost of attendance was at the top of that formula. Every college and university has a cost of attendance, and this is the cost of 1 year at that college or university. Every college and university has a different cost of attendance because colleges cost different amounts. Some colleges cost more than others, as you know. So every college is going to sum together all of the main expenses for 1 year of college, including tuition and fees, the room, the meal plan, in estimates of what a standard student pays for books, for personal items like toothbrush and toothpaste, all of the food, necessary items for the dorm room. Every college and university comes up with this one number of what they believe an average student at their school spends in 1 year, and that's called the cost of attendance. The expected family contribution is a calculated amount, and this amount is supposed to represent what your family has the ability to absorb or pay for 1 year of college expenses. So you're going to fill out these financial aid applications, and all of your information is going to go into this federal formula. And that formula is going to take all your information and determine a number for your family. And that number is your expected family contribution. That number represents what this federal formula believes your family can pay for 1 year of college. The main message in this expected family contribution, or EFC as we call it, is that families have the primary responsibility to pay for college. There's a lot of help for you, but the family has the primary responsibility. It is an investment of the family to send a student to college. This calculated number, this EFC, is not necessarily what your family will end up paying for college. That's going to depend on the financial aid you receive. But the EFC, this calculated number, is going to help the financial aid office determine your financial aid eligibility, what they can give you in financial aid. So if we think about that formula, colleges are going to take their cost, they're going to subtract what your family can contribute, basically your share of the cost, and the rest of that cost, the difference, is called your financial aid eligibility. That's what you can receive in financial aid. Not necessarily what you will receive, but it's what you can receive. If you're curious about your expected family contribution, there are a couple of calculators out there on the internet that you can use. You can put in your information and get basically an estimate of your expected family contribution. The College Board has a site called Big Future. It's bigfuture.collegeboards.org. They have an EFC calculator. And then the FAFSA has an EFC calculator. If you go to the main website of the FAFSA, FAFSA.gov, you'll see on the lower right-hand corner the FAFSA forecaster, which will give an estimate of your EFC. Just wanted to provide an example to show what a typical family would have in an EFC. In this example, we're showing basically how your assets play a role in the EFC. So on the screen you can see in our example we have three families, family A, family B, and family C. For simplicity's sake, we'll say that every family has 4 people in the family, 2 parents and 2 students. And each family is sending 1 child to college next year. Looking at combined parent income, that first line, you can see that every family has the same combined parent income of $75,000. Then the second line shows combined parent assets. This is the total amount that parents have in assets, so savings and checking accounts. Family A, you can see, makes $75,000, but they have no assets, no money in the bank, $0 in assets. Putting family A's information into that EFC calculation, family A comes up with an EFC of 7819. So family A is expected to contribute almost $8,000 in college costs. Family B makes the same amount of money but has saved more money, $75,000, which is a very significant amount of money sitting in a savings or a checking account. Though family B has $75,000, family B's EFC has only gone up to about $10,000. So while family B has so much more in assets than family A, the EFC only increased just about a little under $3,000, really only about $2,300. And then family C, same amount of income, has a huge amount of assets, $150,000. And that EFC went up to $14,000. So you can see the EFC does rise as family assets increase. So the more families have saved, they are expected to contribute a little bit more, but not a significant amount. And that's good news for any of you that have savings or have money in a college savings plan. For assets, parents are only expected to contribute about 5% of those assets for college costs. The rest of it are earmarked for other expenses. One more example, and this shows more how income differences can affect the EFC. We've got 3 different families, family A, B, and C. They all have 4 people in their family and 1 child going to college. But the differences between these 3 families is that they make different amounts in income. They all have $50,000 in assets, so $50,000 sitting in a savings or a checking account, a significant amount. But family A has an income of $75,000. In that EFC calculation, it is determined that family A has an EFC of almost $8,800, $8,798. Family B, same amount of assets, but because their income is increased to $100,000, their EFC has increased all the way up to $17,000. And then you can see in that final column, column C with family C, family C makes $150,000 in combined parent income, and their EFC has jumped to $32,000 with their $50,000 in savings. Now these are just examples. The best thing for you to do to determine your EFC is to use one of those EFC calculators, and that'll give you an idea of what colleges will assume you can contribute for college costs. This is an illustration of how that formula works. Let's say I'm a family and I have an EFC of $5,000. So it's determined based on my financial aid applications that my family can contribute $5,000 for college. There are 4 colleges in this example, and the total height of each bar illustrates the total cost of the college. So college A is the most expensive. It has the highest bar on this bar graph. College A is about $60,000. The blue part of the bar represents my EFC, what my family is expected to contribute. So of that $60,000 of College A's cost, my family has to contribute $5,000. The rest of that bar, the green part of the bar, is what I'm eligible to receive in financial aid, because that's the difference between the total cost of college minus what my family has to contribute. College B is a little bit less, it's $40,000. My EFC is the same, it's the same across the board, so I still have to contribute $5,000 at College B, but my eligibility for financial aid is a little bit less because, of course, the college costs less. Same goes for College C and then College D. I am eligible for less financial aid when the college is less expensive. And one more example here of how colleges award financial aid. In this example, I am a student with an EFC of $5,000, and you can see that at the bottom of your screen. Let's say I'm considering a college, College B, which costs $40,000. This entire barrel, this entire illustration represents $40,000. So at the bottom of the barrel is my EFC, what I am supposed to contribute as a family. Colleges then try to fill in the rest of the barrel. So they first put in my family's contribution, then they see that I have a lot of eligibility for financial aid. So perhaps in this example, I'm given a scholarship of $9,500, a grant of $13,500, a student loan of $5,500, maybe a federal work-study program award of $3,500. There's a little bit of room left at the barrel. So the college gave me a lot of financial aid, but they couldn't fill in my entire financial aid eligibility. They are able to give me $3,000 more, but they ran out of financial aid. So that remaining $3,000 is what we call unmet need. Any unmet need is the family's responsibility. So the college is $40,000. My initial responsibility as a family, my EFC is $5,000. I wait to see what the college gives me. They give me a good amount of financial aid, but any remaining amount that they don't cover is back on my shoulders as a family. Let's say you're a family and you go through, you receive financial aid, you select a college, and then you need to determine how to pay your remaining amount that you have to owe to that college. As an example, let's say I'm a family and I owe $5,000 for the year at a college or university. Often families use different resources to come up with the balance due at the college. So in this example, my family has put together some savings from the student and savings from the parent, $500 each. Many colleges offer a payment plan that allows you to pay for college over the course of the year. And so perhaps the student decides he'll work part-time and contribute $500 over the course of the year, and the parent, by working throughout the year, will also contribute about $1,000 over the course of the year. And then finally, perhaps as a family, we decide to take a small loan, an education loan of $2,500. All of these amounts together come up with that $5,000 that we owe as a family to that college. So keep in mind, when you get your college bill, you might have to pull your funds from different resources, your savings and your current income, your future income, meaning taking a loan, to pay for that college cost. Just a word about federal direct student loans. These are the main loans that college students receive. And these loans are given to every student who fills out a FAFSA. The student is the only borrower on these loans. So parents, you are not a cosigner, you are nowhere on these loans. These are only student loans. They don't require a credit check, as most students don't have any type of credit history. And there are two different types, subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized loans mean that the loan does not accrue interest while the student's in school. Unsubsidized loans do accrue interest, so interest is accruing while the student's in school. However, the interest and the loan, none of that needs to be repaid till after the student graduates. There are annual limits on these loans, so as a freshman, for example, students can only receive $5,500 in these loans. The interest rate is fixed for the life of the loan, but it changes for each new year's loan. So for all of the loans given to students in 2015-16, the interest rate on those loans is 4.29%. That'll stay for those loans until they're paid off. Next year, there will be new loans given to students with a new interest rate, and that's set every year, that interest rate in the summer. And then finally, as I mentioned, students don't repay these loans till after graduation. And as an example, if a student takes the most federal direct student loans that he or she is eligible to receive for 4 years of college, that student will have $27,000 in student loan debt. It's a significant amount, but students are able to pay that off if they're able to get themselves a job after graduation. The loan repayment amount would be about $300 per month, and students would pay off that loan over 10 years. The good news about federal direct student loans is that there are many repayment programs, and the federal government works with students to help them repay these loans. So if a student can't get a job right away after graduation or gets a job with a very low salary and can't meet his or her loan payment, the student can work with the federal government to modify that payment so that the student is able to pay a lower amount per month. There are some great community resources out there for you to help you through this financial aid process. One is called College Goal Sunday, and this is a nationwide program. It is run by each state, and the program provides free assistance completing the FAFSA. Program events are held in January and February. And if you go to collegegoalsundayusa.org, you can look up the events near you. These events are fabulous. You walk in with your tax documents, your income, your asset documents. You sit down at a computer with a volunteer, usually someone from a financial aid office, and that person walks you through completing the FAFSA so that you're able to complete the FAFSA, asking all the questions you have, and then submit it. There are also educational opportunity centers around the country, and they provide admissions and financial aid help for families. There are several college access organizations out there. You can look for organizations in your community, in your region, that provide free admissions and financial aid help. And then finally, if you need help completing your taxes, there are free tax preparation centers in many areas of the country. You can go to irs.gov to see if there is a tax preparation center near you. Wanted to mention one tool called net price calculators, and these give an estimate of what your family would receive in financial aid at a specific school. This is an online tool. It's found on every college and university website. It will ask you questions about your family finances and student academics. It's completely anonymous. You don't have to put in any identifying information like your name or your phone number or your address. You'll answer the questions about your income, your assets, and then this calculator will provide an estimate of what the student would receive at that college or university in financial aid. And as a result, it will let you know your net price, which is basically what you would pay for the student to attend that college after taking financial aid into consideration. Now, this is just an estimate. You can't take this estimate and then bring it to the financial aid office demanding that amount of money, but it will give you just a good idea of what that college could provide in financial aid. It's going to show both financial aid from the federal government and the college or university. And some of these calculators, not all of them, but some of them also provide the merit-based aid. So they show the merit-based aid that your son or daughter might receive at a college or university. And that's usually based on the GPA and the SAT scores that you enter into that calculator when you're answering the question. Wanted to let you know what you can do now as you prepare and start the financial aid process. Best thing you can do immediately is to research financial aid deadlines. Go to the financial aid website of every college and university where the student is applying and write down those financial aid deadlines and the required applications. Do all the required applications by those financial aid deadlines. Deadlines are so important, so do make sure that you comply with all those deadlines. It's helpful to have a family discussion about paying for college, good for students and parents to sit down so that everyone is clear who will be paying for college and how much each person plans to contribute. Those net price calculators I mentioned are helpful just to give you an estimate of what each college and university can provide. And finally, on MEFA.org, the organization website where I work, we have emails. You can sign up for those, and they'll just give you reminders every 2 to 4 weeks of what you should be doing through this financial aid process. So feel free to sign up for those emails right on our homepage. And that's the conclusion of the webinar. Contact information if you want to get in touch with me is on your screen for email address and phone number. And I'm happy to answer any questions now if anyone has any.
Hi everyone, so if you see the Q&A box, you can submit questions. This is Meredith Lawrence from the OEOP. So we've already gotten a few questions and I'll ask them. One of them asks how having more than one student in college simultaneously affects the EFC formula. So if you have more than one student at college at once, how will that affect your eligibility?
I just caught the end of that. Do you mind just repeating it?
Sure. So if you have more than one student in college at the same time, how does that affect your estimated, your EFC?
Eligibility, great question. So if you do have 2 or 3 students in college, the financial aid application formula does take that into consideration. Some colleges will simply split your EFC into 2. So if you have a student in college and it's expected that you will contribute $5,000 for that student, and then you have a second student come along and then you have 2 students in college, the first college will split your EFC in half, and the college will expect you to contribute $2,500 for the older student and then $2,500 for the younger student. Some colleges don't completely split it in half, but they do reduce it by a good amount. So maybe you're not expected to contribute $5,000, you're only expected to contribute $3,000 for each student.
We also had a question about what the difference is between the EFC calculator and the net price calculator.
Okay, that's a good question. The EFC calculator will put your information through that main EFC formula and come up with your EFC. The net price calculator does that same thing. It calculates your EFC, but it goes a step further and gives you an estimate of what you'll receive in financial aid. So every net price calculator is different because each college and university builds its own net price calculator. So that net price calculator on each college and university website is going to give you an estimate of what you would receive in financial aid at that specific college or university. And you might have 2 colleges and they might have maybe the same general cost and your EFC is the same. So perhaps your financial aid eligibility is the same at each of those schools, but your financial aid might be different, and that might be because one college has more financial aid funds, or they're awarding them in different ways, and so the financial aid that you receive at every school can be very different based on how colleges award financial aid and how much money they have. So net price calculators will give you an estimate at each school of what you might receive in that financial aid.
Thanks. We also have a question. If you have 2 students in college, is it better for the one of the older students to file independently, or should they both be filed as dependents?
You can't actually decide to file independently. You have to meet one of those criteria that I mentioned, and again, those are just small pockets. The student has to be married or in the military or a veteran or legal guardianship, an emancipated minor, an orphan. If your student does not still fit into one of those criteria, then your student will be dependent. So you can't opt to make a student independent. Now, if you do have a student who, as I mentioned, can't find a parent to fill in those financial aid applications, or has 2 parents but both of them are missing or not in the student's life, then you can talk to the financial aid office about making that student independent. But if you're a family with students in the household, those students are likely going to be dependent, so both of those students will have to report parent information.
Great, thanks. And another question we have is, does having a 401k affect the CSS profile?
The CSS profile will ask the value of your 401k. So as I mentioned, it is not reported on the FAFSA. On the FAFSA, you won't report the value of your 401k. The profile will ask about it, but it actually doesn't use the information in the formula. The schools that use the profile use the federal EFC formula, but then they actually have a second EFC formula that takes into account the additional information that you're reporting on that CSS profile. But most of the time, the college does not actually use the value of your 401k. A college financial aid administrator might eyeball it just to see how much you have in retirement, but most of the time they don't take that information into consideration, so it will not affect your financial aid eligibility or your financial aid award.
Can I ask a question also?
Sure.
Meredith, another thing that I remember from another financial aid session that I listened to with the financial planner was having how do you have a good understanding of whether you should save or not based on your economic capacity? Meaning that if you have limited funds, if you're a family that makes $50,000 or less, is it a good strategy to save, or is it a better strategy to really understand the financial aid process, because you really don't have a lot of capacity to save, and if you do, you might, the little bit of funds you have saved is sort of going to be channeled toward paying tuition when you probably would have gotten a full ride or more aid because your family does not have a lot of financial capacity. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. What we always tell folks is that it's so important to save, and if you do have lower income, a lot of the time in the financial aid formula, your assets are not even considered. So if you're a family, for example, and you make less than $50,000, a lot of the time in the financial aid formula, your assets are simply ignored. So even if you have some assets, they're ignored because the formula understands that lower income families need those assets to help pay for household expenses. So it's always helpful to save, because even if you have a little bit of savings, that will help with your college bill down the line, and it won't affect the financial aid process. Even if you're a middle income family and you have saved for college, as I mentioned, the formula only assumes about 5% of those assets will be used for college costs, even if all of those assets are in a college savings plan. So if I'm a family and I have saved $100,000, which is a huge amount of money, the financial aid formula only assumes that I'm going to use about $5,000 for college costs. So $95,000 won't be used for college. So it's always a good plan to save, and especially if you're one of those lower middle or lower income families, a lot of the time it's not going to affect your eligibility at all if you have those savings for college.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had one more about how colleges look at parents who are self-employed with great fluctuations in their income.
Okay, so if you're applying for financial aid for next academic year, so you've got a college, or excuse me, high school senior going to college next year, you'll fill out the financial aid applications and they will ask about your 2015 income. So the income reviewed for your financial aid will be 2015. But if you're a family and you have fluctuating income, if you're self-employed or own a business, if your just salary goes up and down, you can always let the financial aid office know that. The CSS profile will actually ask about 3 years of your income. So they're going to look at your 2015 income, but they'll actually ask about your 2014 income, and they'll ask you to project your 2016 income. And they'll look at that range of your income, and they might take that into consideration when awarding your financial aid. But if you're worried about your income fluctuation, the best thing to do is to contact the financial aid office. For the most part, they're going to base your financial aid on 2015. But if you write in and say 2015 was a banner year and I can show you my income and the 5 years prior to that was much lower, or perhaps 2015 was lower and you've had higher income, they can, a lot of the time, take that into consideration. So if you're worried about your income that's represented on those applications, go ahead and contact the financial aid office. You can send them a fax, send them an email, write them a letter. You can call them and let them know, and then they can let you know how they want to receive the information, and then they can take that into consideration.
What are your thoughts also about students who have a job? So there will be a lot of students who may have a job in their junior or senior year, and I've heard, I don't know if this is true, that that income could be counted as income that they should have saved, or it could be counted as income toward the cost of college tuition. Is that true? And a lot of times it's gone by the time, you know, they're getting ready to go to college. What is your suggestion for families around students who are working in high school?
Right, that's a good question. So a lot of students do work in high school, and when looking at student income, there's actually a protection of a good amount of income for students. So within the EFC formula, students who make under about $6,300 are pretty safe because that income is excluded. So basically the financial aid formula will add up all the student income that's reported. It'll subtract what the student paid in taxes because it knows the student gave that money to the federal government, and it'll subtract what the student paid in state taxes because it knows the student doesn't have that money anymore. And then the formula deducts a pretty significant amount. Right now it's about $6,300. So if you're a student and you made $4,000 or $5,000, none of that income is going to be counted. The formula assumes that that income is needed for other things. If you made more than $6,300, only a percentage of that income is assumed to be used for college. So the formula doesn't assume that the rest of it can be used. It only takes a portion of that. So a lot of the time it's okay that students are working and they should continue to work because it won't affect their financial aid eligibility.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, I think we're going to go on and wrap up. Meredith, thank you so much for your time this evening. We wanted to also present or let everyone online know that we do have another webinar planned for March 2016. We're getting the final dates confirmed, and it will be focused on making college decisions and how to consider all the choices that are coming in. Our presenter will be Quentin MacArthur. He's the Associate Director of Admissions for MIT. Linda, anything else finally you want to say?
No, I want to thank all of you for joining us and for your thoughtful questions, and to refer back to Meredith's slides, because she had some information on there about contacting her, and we will be sending you a link to our survey and also information about being able to see the slides again and hear the recording again, because I know that was a lot of really valuable information, and I want to thank Meredith for her time and her information that she presented to us. Thank you all so much. We will see you at the next webinar.
Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you, Meredith.